Hello, Cathy here. Welcome to the Cinemile. I am without Dave today. He is in Ireland for the weekend, and I'm here with my mother, Linda.
Hello, hi.
So Linda's returning guest. This is now her fourth time on the Cinemile.
That's right, yeah.
She's my favourite guest, obviously, as she's my mother, but also she's our most popular guest on Twitter. She gets lots of feedback, positive feedback.
Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. And so what we are going to see today is a movie called Their Finest, which neither of us had actually heard of until we started looking up the listings. But we're both really keen on this. It looks really nice. It's a British movie set in World War II about a female secretary newly appointed as a screenwriter for propaganda films, working on a movie about Dunkirk.
I think it's the evacuation of troops or
Yeah.
people from Dunkirk. Yeah, a World War II movie. It says it's charming, light-hearted, but heartwarming.
Yes, so it's good reviews. It was either this or an Orlando Bloom thriller.
Which had shocking reviews.
Yeah, I can't even remember what it was called.
No, it was some adventure with Orlando Bloom that we were going to go, but
we weren't into it. And then what we really wanted to see together, but life doesn't work like this, sadly, is the new movie Snatched, which is out next week with Goldie Hawn and Amy Schumer, who we love. That would have been a perfect movie for us to go to, but it's not out this weekend.
the mother-daughter movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that would have been fun.
But I think this is perfect because the last movie we reviewed together was Moana, which was a female taking her own power movie. So I think this is another one
I hope
of
so.
a girl who accidentally steps into a role that wouldn't have been available for her, but that it's wartime.
Okay, yeah.
So, should be interesting.
Should be good.
Yeah.
And we're excited because we're both going to get Diet Coke, which we don't normally drink.
Because it's afternoon in Richmond, it's kind of foggy, we're sitting by the river and we're both exceptionally tired.
Yeah.
So Diet Coke is on the agenda and a good movie.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Bye.
see you later.
This is the BBC. London suffered further heavy bombing raids last night.
Welcome to the Ministry of Information Film Division. Mr. Buckley seems to think you're what we need.
For doing what?
We'll need someone to write the slop.
Slop?
Women's dialogue.
I thought it was a secretarial post.
Oh, for God's sake, keep that to yourself.
30 million attend the cinema every week. Your film must show your American sisters that this is a war their husbands should be fighting.
So what do you think? No screen credit?
But obviously we can't pay you as much as the chaps.
We must give them a character with whom they can identify.
Uncle Frank, 60s, looks older.
We all have a part to play in defeating him.
Not this part. It's a corpse roll. He's dead before the end of Act 3.
Hello, Cathy here. With my mother, Linda.
Hey.
We are just out of the movie Their Finest. Mom, thoughts? Synopsis? No spoilers?
Synopsis, no spoilers. I'm not sure. It's interesting. It was kind of like a slow burn of a movie set in the 40s, and it kind of had that whole... the pace took its time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a bit subdued after it. It was...
Yeah, me too.
There was something about it. It was, in some ways, parts of it were like slapstick and comedy and a bit cliched, and yet there were parts of it that were very real and very surprising, and like, no spoilers, but like it looked like it was going into fairy tale at one point and fantasy, and it's like, oh my God, are they really going to go down the fairy tale route? And then suddenly it got very real. The characters got very real, so it's, in some ways, it's like one to take your time digesting.
Yeah.
Covered a lot.
It did. So it was about a woman in 1940 who was a secretary, and because of the lack of men in the newspaper, she ended up getting to write a bit of a comic strip, and off the back of that was offered a job in the propaganda department, where they were looking for a more female perspective around movies, because they thought that the movies that they were producing weren't appropriate for women, and specifically they wanted her to write SOP, which they call women's dialogue. Yeah,
I thought it was slop. He was saying.
yeah, they said
SOP.
SOP, and some people objected to a woman being hired, and one of the lines was, "But you don't employ dogs to write woof woof, so why do you need a woman to write SOP?" And then anyway, it kind of carries on from there. She gets to work on a movie fueled by a female story around the rescue of some soldiers in Dunkirk. So it's really interesting because you're watching a movie about a movie, which I always love. I don't know why I love movies about movies. Movies about screenwriting and movies about is really interesting, like women in the war, how war in some ways was actually very good for women, because they got to do jobs that traditionally women didn't get to do.
There was a couple of very moving lines around that. Was one woman to the other saying, the men are worried how it's going to be if we won't go back into our boxes.
Yeah.
And it was very telling. And then there's another line where there's the young woman and the old man, and for whatever reason they're both getting opportunities. As he said to her, we're only getting these opportunities because the young men are away, and it would be a waste.
Yeah, and he
to
said,
not take them.
we're getting them because men are dying, but we
Yes.
can't do anything about the death.
Yes.
So I found all that really moving, and I really just enjoyed the setting of London in the 40s and of the Blitz. It was interesting to see them in the tube stations. Yeah, and the cast. We need to talk about the cast. Bill Nighy stole the show.
Oh my God, he was amazing.
Yeah, like he does in every movie.
Well, he does, and he feels like, it looks like he's overacting. It feels like he's overacting, but it's really very real.
Because he's so very touching.
He's and he sang, oh my goodness, he sang, will you go, lassie, go?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful.
And I was weeping.
Yeah, we did cry a bit. She was amazing.
She was
Gemma
very good.
Arterton. She's someone that I know and have seen in movies, but I've not seen her kind of carry a movie like that.
I don't know her, but she was stunningly beautiful.
And such an understated performance, I thought.
Yes.
She really carried it, and she played that kind of stoic character without seeming, sometimes those stoic characters can just be a bit boring. She wasn't like that, and she really advocated for women, and she was really interesting, and she was quite brave as well. She was living. We'll wait till we go to Spoiler Street about that. But yeah, I really enjoyed her, and I really enjoyed Richard E. Grant. We had Jeremy Irons briefly in it.
Oh my goodness, he was very good.
Yeah.
Very, very short role, but he packed a punch with it. Very good.
Real heavyweights. And then we had Sam Claflin. I had to look up his name. We know him as Finnick from The Hunger Games.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was good. He's like the new Hugh Grant, isn't he? He had that
Yes,
kind of
that-
posh,
yes.
romantic vibe.
Hugh Grant, I was looking at him thinking exactly like a
Yeah.
young Hugh Grant. And there was like a token American. They were trying to make this movie and trying to please the
Oh,
Americans.
I love him.
and
His name
was
is
really good.
What's his name? I've forgotten, but I really like him. He's in so much stuff at the moment, including Girls, which is one of my favourite shows. But he was in a movie we watched together last year, if you recall, about a woman who has a one-night stand and she's getting an abortion.
Oh, I remember.
He was the love
yeah.
interest.
Yeah, he was the love interest.
He's just really good, and I think he's always charming and everything. And it's very funny because he's playing an American soldier who can't act. And watching a good actor act someone who can't act is really funny as well.
I think that's some of the charm of, or the interest of it, watching a movie about the making of a movie.
Yeah.
It takes it to a deeper level.
It does.
And even to watch how they set up the scenes, you're like, oh my goodness, like they were filming water scenes indoors and they're in tanks of water, and it's like you don't get to see the movie being made usually.
I know, and I wanted to watch the movie at the end, and they have a couple of good lines, like they say, film is real life with all the boring bits cut out.
Yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. And they said that this movie has authenticity, optimism, and a dog. So there was fun. Like, I thought there was a good few laughs in it.
Oh, it was like that whole slapstick feel or that laughing feel. So it almost captured the whole. Well, I know it was a bit later than Charlie Chaplin, but it captured some of the sort of comic element that they used to work.
Yeah, like they
into
said, we need a
films.
dog. Yeah.
But it was something like, it was almost like you saw the film industry grow up, and maybe that's what happened around the 40s when they had to move into the authenticity that they talked about. Because even without getting into spoilers, there was a bit of a twist where they wanted to make the men wanted to make the plot, the heroes had to be male.
Yes.
So they were putting these women into sort of minor roles in the movie, but something happened that meant they had to make the woman the heroine in the end.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and because she kept advocating all along, this is a story about women who steal a boat and sail to Dunkirk to rescue men. And suddenly, as soon as they rescued the men, the women became the background characters, and the men were doing all the hard work, and the men were the heroes. And I just they're like, women don't want to be heroes. Women want to see men who are heroes.
Yes,
Yeah, really
but it had to. It's almost like the plot took on its own story, and despite what was wanted or intended, the women got to be the heroines.
Yeah, which I loved.
Including the woman, the screenwriter, got to be the screenwriter and got to get offered a next role as a screenwriter. So you could see the world changing.
You could see, and even when she was initially hired, they said, we won't give you any screen credits, which I thought was interesting. But I think we're just about to hit Spoiler Street.
Are we? Okay.
Yes. Okay. So hello from Spoiler Street.
What does this mean? We ask everybody to...
No, it means we can just spoil the plot now.
And they can turn off their...
They can turn. They've
Okay,
turned.
okay.
If you're still listening, turn it off if you don't want to know. And yeah, so there was a couple of times I sniggered a bit like that was a little bit silly. For example, you know, she and her co-screenwriter are having, you know, some attraction, and then
the chemistry.
yeah,
was
and
very...
we're thinking, well, she's married, so, you know, oh no, we learn she's not actually married. She's pretending to be married. She's wearing a fake wedding ring, and
bought
she's
the ring
living in
Woolworths.
sin. Yeah. So that was all very convenient, and within about 5 minutes of us finding out she wasn't actually married, her pseudo husband was caught cheating on her, and they broke up very amicably.
Very amicably.
Very amicably. She caught him in bed with another woman, and she was like, "Oh well, bye."
And this is the bit where it seemed like, oh my God, they're just going for the fairy tale.
Yeah, and
Now
we
she'll
both
get
rolled
together.
our eyes
Like,
at that.
oh my God,
Yeah.
here we go. I thought it was going to be ruined for me,
Yeah.
but it proceeded to take twists and
Yeah,
turns.
it did. So then she goes back to Sam Claflin, and they have actually quite an argument because he is quite rude to her and offers to marry her in a very patronising way. And then the movie continues, and
What
then
did she call him? She says, "You're a drunk, you're a bore, you're a bully."
Yeah,
Was it
she said something
like
hard.
this?
She
really went for
the
it.
words she used on him were words he had used about his own abusive father, so it was it was quite nasty of her to say that, but he was being nasty to her too. And then we're like, okay, and then through a very romantic way, I thought, of apologising to him, she wrote an alternative script for that fight and how it should have gone, which is very romantic from one screenwriter to another. And then they share a beautiful kiss, and then a shelf falls on him, and
Are
he
we
dies.
really going with that spoiler?
Well, we're in spoiler
Okay, we're in
street.
spoiler street, okay. Yeah,
And
he
I
does.
just sniggered. I just thought, this is absurd. But it just was too on the nose. Like, they've just kissed, they've just declared their love to each other, and then he's just dead. I don't know, what did you think?
Well, I mean, because it happened in that movie set, it was like, oh my God, are they really going to do this? And yet, that's the reality of the time. They took the whole reality of war,
Yeah, they did, and they had
where your
mentioned-
man would just die like that with no warning, but
Yeah.
they put it into like a movie set. So whilst it seemed unbelievable, I think it was very believable in the 40s.
I guess, and they had talked earlier about another character's grandson had died, not in action, but when he was on leave, he had been hit by a train. And she said, what a waste, you know, he didn't even die in action. And Sam Claflin had said, yeah, but it's always a waste anyway.
It's always a waste.
So they kind of did hark back to that. I don't know, I just sniggered a bit. I thought, right. And he just died, they put a blanket over him, and then that's what Mom was alluding to earlier. Well, it was the worst night of the bombing of the Blitz so far, and so while he died in the studio, Bill Nighy had been injured, so couldn't act anymore. One of the American guy had flown out of the country, so he couldn't act anymore. They had no male actors left to film the scene of the boat being fixed and
so somebody had to fix the propeller. So finally, from the corner, she piped up and said, Rose can fix the propeller.
Yeah, and that was amazing. And only because she was in the room, it was like none of the men even, their brain didn't even go there to think of Rose as being the person who's fixing it. So they needed a woman there to advocate that. So that was all really interesting. And then in the end, the movie took another turn and ended up, it wasn't a love story at all. It was her story.
It was her story.
Yeah, and I did like that. So she's, you know, obviously devastated that this guy has died, but she moves on and she steps into his role on Bill Nighy's advice of take these opportunities as they arise, and then she ultimately becomes, the assumption is, a successful screenwriter. So yeah, it was really interesting.
It was a lovely movie.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the plot, and I think the plot kind of had a few holes in it and it was a bit predictable. But I think the filming was beautiful. I think the mood was beautiful.
The score was nice.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
the
I loved
musical
the
score
music,
was
yeah.
lovely. Red Sails in the Sunset, beautiful music
Yeah.
from the era. But somehow there was something about the pace of it that seemed to really capture the era for me.
Interesting.
And the lighting and the skies, it felt very authentic.
Yeah, it felt to me at one point that the pacing was a little bit off around the time that her and her pseudo husband broke up, and that all just felt a little bit weird. Now I know I saw in the credits that it's based on a book, so I'd be interested to see how like the book it is. But yeah, and it at one point I thought, oh no, is this going to be too long? And then it wrapped up. But I think overall I felt very inspired by it.
I think overall I felt moved.
Yeah.
I would say I really liked it, but I don't know that I really loved it.
No, me neither. I just really enjoyed it. It's a perfect like Saturday afternoon, rainy day movie.
And I think it's the kind of movie that will stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the performances, individually the performances were memorable. I'm not sure how well they all married together. As you said, Bill Nighy stole the show, but he also felt like he was doing a one-man show.
Yeah.
He does kind of
He does. And
take it over.
Did you notice that he had the same relationship with his agent as he has in Love
I
Actually?
know, I
His
know.
agent is his best friend.
Yes,
that was really funny.
I know.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it overall. And then another thing I noted at the end when I checked who the director was, now her name, I may say this wrong, is Lone Scherfig, but she's Nordic. But she's actually, so it was a woman who directed it. I didn't realise that was a female name until I looked it up. And she's also the director of An Education. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's a really good movie that won a lot of Oscars a couple of years ago. And then One Day, remember, based on that book we'd read?
It was beautiful.
So that was great. They got a female director for it as well. So overall, I think, in terms of a female feminist movie, it's awesome. It has a really strong message, and we did both cry a couple of times. And laugh.
So it was very moving. But you know what I found really interesting? The war thing, of course, is always very moving and evocative. But 3 of the trailers before the movie even started were war movies.
Yeah, well, there's a big movie, Dunkirk, coming out this year.
There's Dunkirk, and there was also Churchill, and then there was one other one that I don't remember the name of. So it's like, oh my goodness, war movie seems to be a theme.
Yeah.
And they're always very emotional. They're always very moving. I mean, what a waste.
What I enjoyed about this movie, though, as a war movie, is that it's set in a small scale or in a small group of people, which I like, as opposed to movies with humongous battle scenes, which I don't tend to engage with as much. And it also wasn't overly patriotic.
No.
It was just about like everyday, day-to-day, nice, honest people. It wasn't a big, they were talking about like British people being heroes, but they were also talking about French people being heroes and American being heroes. It actually didn't feel like a propaganda movie.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It felt like, you're right, it felt like an intimate movie about an intimate few people who were just progressing through their life, dealing with their loves, dealing with their losses.
Yeah.
Because there was, given that we're still in Spoiler Street, there was the agent who died. Mm-hmm. He was killed in one of the blitzes.
That was gruesome,
That was very
actually.
gruesome.
Yeah.
And his sister just stepped into his place. So it was another woman taking on a man's role as an agent.
her.
And I liked her. And she was saying,
I think she's in Harry Potter, but I couldn't quite figure out who she was. Yeah.
And she took a very non-sentimental approach to taking over the role.
Yeah, she said to Bill Nighy, basically, it was very funny and and a bit silly when Bill Nighy read the script and he thought he was playing the young war hero,
so
and then he could play the old uncle. And she said, basically, if you don't take this role, you're not making any money and we're kicking you off the books. And I really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah, she says you're 63, you're not 36.
Yeah. And it kind of showed how ridiculous he was that he would have even considered that he would be going for that role.
Yes, I think that's what happened in the movie. The women stepped in and said things that the men would never say to each other.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Very interesting.
Did you notice the age profile of the cinema? Quite old?
I did, yeah.
Which happens a lot in Richmond anyway, but in particular now this was a particularly old one. But overall, really enjoyable movie.
I liked it, yeah, very, very pleasant, very restful, and very much got transported to a time and a place. So
and I love the fashion, I have to say.
Oh yeah, the dresses, the clothes were beautiful.
It looked fabulous.
The women were all beautiful, the clothes were beautiful, and the men were just on that cusp between we're the rulers of the world and our world's being shattered.
Yes, so interesting, and it does make you think, men who did go to war and came back, it must have been such a profound shift in society. It's so interesting. So all that stuff just really makes you think, and I really like how it was all captured, and with an amazing female lead, a very strong female director, and a really great cast. So
really great cast.
I really recommend it.
What are we giving it?
Ooh, we don't tend to do ratings on this.
Do ratings?
No.
Okay,
you can give it one though.
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up. Absolutely.
What
Not
would
the
you give
best
it
movie I've seen, but a very enjoyable movie.
What would you give it out of 5?
I'd give it a solid 4.
Solid 4, yeah, I agree. Give it a solid 4. Okay, cool. Okay. And thank you for coming on again.
Hey,
and I do have to say, last podcast, Dave and I were skiving and hadn't done any packing for our house move, and Mom was horrified when she arrived yesterday and said, "Are you moving in a week? Because you haven't packed anything," and we're so ashamed. So Mom has been kicking us into gear.
I had to take her phone off.
So thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh, the summertime is coming, and the trees are softly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around.